Where was Moses buried and why is this important? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we conclude our verse-by-verse study of the book of Deuteronomy on walking through the Bible.
His word, the glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Deuteronomy chapter 34. We're going to be reading from verses 1 to 12. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So Deuteronomy 34, beginning at verse 1. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim, and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the south, and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, This is the land of which I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there. So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows his grave to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his natural vigor diminished. And the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses ended. Now Joshua the son of Nun was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him. So the children of Israel heeded him and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. But since then there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, in all the signs and wonders which the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt, before Pharaoh, before all his servants, and in all his land, and by all the mighty power and all the great terror which Moses performed in the sight of all Israel. Having had Moses retell and reconfirm the law of God given to Israel, and then bestow his final blessings on them, it is now time for Moses to climb Mount Nebo, view the promised land, and die. We've had God's instructions for Moses to do this earlier in Deuteronomy and in the book of Numbers, but here is the actual account of it happening. Mount Nebo is said to be across from Jericho, which would make sense, for that is where Israel was situated. From the ground, Moses couldn't see Canaan, because the mountain range here blocked his view. However, from the top of Mount Nebo, Moses is said to have had an extensive view of Canaan to the south, the west, and the north. Up on the screen now are pictures of what Farrell Jenkins, a preacher of the Gospels, saw from the top of what today is thought to be Mount Nebo. In the first photo, you can see the northern edge of the Dead Sea, the wilderness of Judea, and the central mountain range. Now in the second picture, you are also looking across the Jordan Valley towards the highlands of the Promised Land. As you can tell, there is quite a bit of haze that obstructs the farther view, but the view is still amazing. Now there are some skeptics that like to come along and say that the extent to which Moses could see from Mount Nebo is exaggerated here in Deuteronomy, for the mountains in central Israel block the view west to the Mediterranean, as well as the view south. Now let's admit, these are the same people that usually claim that the book of Deuteronomy was written by someone much later than Moses, too. So to those claims I ask, what would the motivations of someone be to exaggerate the claims made here in Deuteronomy 34? This is especially true when you consider the fact that in Numbers 27 and Deuteronomy 32, the two other places that give this command, the writer is very general and simply says, go view the land of Canaan. You would expect that if what is described here in Deuteronomy 34 cannot possibly be seen, that either the author would remain vague in his description, or state that Moses saw the land in a vision, which the language of the text does not support. So that leads us to one of three conclusions. Either we have the mountain wrong today, which is possible. We have the exact place where Moses looked for wrong. Or the view today is not as good due to the change in atmospheric conditions. In other words, pollution. There were no cars, trucks, airplanes, or anything else that powers the industrial age present in the days of Moses. The views would have been absolutely clear, meaning you could see further, and from the right vantage point, see past the mountains that block your view from most places. If this chapter was written by someone else, and almost all of it certainly would have had to have been, since Moses' death is described, then since the person was so specific, not only would they have been inspired by God, but they likely would have gone to see the views themselves, which could be a reason why there is more specificity here. This wasn't a sacred mountain that nobody could approach. It would have been in the land given to the tribe of Reuben, and any Israelite could have visited it. Therefore I will place my trust in the Lord and in the word that has been preserved for us. Moses was 120 years old when he died, and by saying that his vision had not been dimmed, nor his natural vigor diminished, we realize that Moses didn't die of old age. Even though he was old, he died because the Lord decreed it so, due to his sin at Kadesh in Numbers 20. But Israel wouldn't bury Moses' body. The Lord would, in a valley in the land of Moab opposite Beth Peor, near where Israel was at that time. But nobody would know where the grave of Moses was, unlike in the other Old Testament stories like Rachel or Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Why was this to be? So that Israel wouldn't build a temple to Moses and worship him there, just as there is the memorial church of Moses found on Mount Nebo today. Mankind is so tempted to worship men instead of God, and seeing Moses' place in Israel's history as their lawgiver, it is evident to God that Moses' burial site would become a shrine, so he buried Moses himself to prevent that. With the man who we met all the way back in Exodus 2 and have referred to all the way through our journey through the Old Testament now dead, the time was now for Joshua to take the helm and lead Israel over the Jordan to finally take the promised land. But before he did that, it is said that Israel mourned for Moses for 30 days, the same time they mourned after the death of Aaron in Numbers 20. As a final epitaph to Moses, written by another author at a later time, it is said that since Moses, there hadn't risen another prophet in Israel like him, not only in authority, but in all the signs and wonders that he performed. This epitaph didn't demand hundreds of years to pass or dozens of prophets to arise in order for that statement to be made. For even in Joshua, we can see that although he is a mighty leader, he will not be Moses. Whether Joshua wrote this himself or maybe a priest or scribe sometime after Joshua, we don't know. But it too is inspired of God and preserved by him for us. And not only that, it is a true statement, for we're going to read of many mighty prophets after Moses, but none will be like Moses save one, the one that Deuteronomy 18 prophesies of, Jesus Christ the Lord. And so with that, we conclude our verse-by-verse study of the book of Deuteronomy. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's overall review of what was revealed to us in this book, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends, so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.